Привет, добрый day, heroes. I'm Travis Hightower. I'm the host of the Slava Heroyam podcast here from Dallas, Texas, or Plano, Texas. And I am wearing a Talarico for Senate hat, which might be backwards unless I flip it around. But I debated whether or not I want to wear this hat during the podcast, but this is a Ukraine support channel. It supports the truth of what's going on in Ukraine, and Talarico's opponent does not support Ukraine. So, at this point, I feel very justified in saying this is the better candidate. If you're here to support Ukraine. And, but I do want to welcome Russians or the Russian sympathetic. I want to live in a world where I don't have to refer to Russians as orcs. I want to live in a world where Russians can have a chance at a true liberal democracy of their own. I think that is one thing that Putin fears most. I think he fears it above losing his own rule or his life, that Russia would somehow fall to such, an evil Western ideology. And the reason I'm mentioning that today is because one of the topics that we're going to talk about is the May 9th celebrations that took place around Europe and the United States. They were more front and foremost on social media this year. And that is because Russia wants to once again normalize, if they can, their presence in Europe and the United States as if nothing terrible is going on and they're not committing atrocities every day, which we know they are. So, as always, we start with the atrocities since the last podcast on this show, and we cover as many as we can. And we talk about the human safari, which is the QR code will lead you to the webpage for a documentary on the human safari. Human safari is when Russians drone operators deliberately track and hunt civilians. They can do so up to 60 miles from the front line. They have been known to do so. They stalk their targets. They learn their habits. Even if a person is being very careful, you have to leave your home sometime. And they will choose a target. They will hunt you for days, find that opportunity, and then try to explode or to kill or injure you with an FPV drone. That is the human safari. And there is no lack of evidence of this because Russians always like to post these sick little victories on social media. So, victims are not always of human safari, but I do share each week victims and heroes. So, this is the Glory to the Heroes podcast. So, I want to share two heroes that are kind of an honorable mention this week because I still want to spend more time with the three soldiers from Ukraine running a charity that I got to meet 2 weeks ago. Let me introduce you to these two teenagers. 17-year-old Alexander and 14-year-old Rostilov. They are residents of Zaporizhia, and on May 5th, the Revenge of the Sith, which there was an attack, glide bomb attack, a little bit different than the Shahid drones. Glide bombs are kind of start out as crude missiles and then they glide in. So their targets can be pre-chosen, but they're definitely not as accurate as a Tomahawk or anything like that. So they just point them at residential areas and in they come. And these glide bombs claim 12 lives. But these boys had taken several first aid courses, and they carried hemostatic tourniquets with them. And alongside the adults, they helped rescue and assisted victims until first responders arrived because they were just ready for attacks. They taught themselves first aid, knew they would have to be ready for this. And this is not like normal childhood for a 14-year-old and 17-year-old. Um, One of the things that I'm writing about is the continuation of the Children in the Fire documentary that I was able to have the privilege of seeing a screening of. And there are 8 heroes in that story. Well, here's 2 more types of heroes: children that know they're going to be under fire and teach themselves the skills to help others survive. And I want you to think about living in a nation where your teenage high school kids and junior high school kids um, have to prepare for the worst. But it makes heroes of people. But you'd rather these two grow up to be heroes in a medical field, or maybe they, as Ukrainians, which are leading the way in drone technology right now. There is a wonderful channel called Kings and Generals. I'll put their link in the description. They have gone over just how effective Ukrainian drone warfare has been, and it's the reason that Ukraine is winning right now. The victory will come slow if nobody helps them, and more civilians will die if nobody helps them. And that is why I'm an advocate of stopping this genocide as soon as possible, to allow Ukrainian victory as soon as possible, because that's the only way that this war is really going to end. All right. So, 2 human heroes, 2 young heroes helping out against the human safari. I consider the human safari term is about the FPV drones, because everybody seems to know that cruise missiles and Shahed drones are hitting Ukraine every day. And for some reason, there's still some argument about, oh, darn, we can't do anything about it. It's sort of the same mentality of a U.S. school shooting, Gee, that's terrible, but I can't do anything about it. Well, I'm going to, every episode, I show you a way that you can do something about what's happening by giving of your own free charity, but you can also make sure the correct elected officials get elected. You can vote, and you can call your congressman, because it would only take 2 or 3 Republican congressmen to have courage to stand up to what's going on now to end both the Iran war and really the Ukraine war too. All right. Victim number 1 over the past week and a half. This is Yuba. She's a mother of 2. She looks really young, but she was a mother of 2 young children. And our old friend, our old enemy, the Xander missiles were fired into the Kharkiv region. Now, that is because, a week ago, pre-parade, there was supposed to be this ceasefire again. And of course, Russia's notion of a ceasefire is very untrustworthy. And in comes, one of the biggest attacks ever again. And Ukraine knocks 90% of the stuff down every time, but only a no-fly zone would have protected this woman, because you can't get them all every time. And another woman that should have been protected, if we could have had a no-fly zone, is this woman right here. This is Tatiana. She was 52. She was also killed in the Kharkiv region on that same May 4th, 2026 attack. 7 civilians died in that rocket and Xander missile attack on May 4th. I'm not even going to be able to cover them all, because they don't ever always release all the names, even this short of a time later. This is kindergarten teacher in the Sumy region. The Sumy region is just the story of the Sumy region is one of those things that is on the pile of things that the Trump administration is responsible for, is way down on the list. But the Sumy region would not be under attack had we not shut off our intelligence from the Ukrainian military when we were attacking the Kursk. You see how connected I feel to this? I want you to feel the same way. These soldiers are our front line of democracy, and they were having a successful Kursk offensive, which ended when the U.S. ended its intelligence for 3 days. We gave it back eventually because if they didn't, too many Ukrainian soldiers were going to die, and eventually someone would blame Trump for that. But being so easily distracted, what happened in response, once the Kursk offensive was under control by Russia, Russia responded by opening a new front in the Sumy region, which is in the north. So now the Sumy region is an embattled area, and a lot of people have had to flee from the region. But this is Larissa, and her and a colleague who worked at the kindergarten were killed. And this, by the way, is a kindergarten that is not accidentally targeted. This is a bombarded entire neighborhood, and they target these deliberately. And then they go on social media and brag about it. So it's not like there's any doubt. Another young face, another young mother from Zaporizhia. I don't know. Zaporizhia is a different region, but it was probably that same May 4th, May 5th missile attack. It was a big one. Took the life of Katerina. Another young person gone. Another family member, daughter, wife. And then the tactics of the Russians are getting dirtier and dirtier. These are all first responders. If you're a fan of U.S. first responders, if you're not big on soldiers, but from other countries, but you do respect the work that first responders do, here's what happens. So bombard a gas utility, which is actually can be considered, it's civilian infrastructure, but it can be considered a strategic target. You've already hit it. You know you've done the damage you need to do. You could wait for the firefighters to clean up the first strike. It's what the U.S. would do. It's what we would do. You would wait for the first responders to put out the fires, get any injured people out of there, make sure that the fire didn't spread to the surrounding city. And then you could hit it again if you weren't confident that you did enough damage to it. Instead, the Russians attack the facility, see the firefighters doing their job, and immediately attack again, killing these 5 firefighters. One of them is Viktor Kuzmenko. He's a hero of Ukraine. He's in the top left there. In 2024, following yet another Russian strike on Poltava, 17 people were rescued under his leadership. Over 50 operations in the aftermath of shelling, and he leaves behind a wife and son. Dmytro Skrill dedicated over 21 years of his life as a first responder. He is the gentleman to the right, with kind of balding, kind of the widow's peak there. He spent 21 years to save other lives, participating in the response. He's really about firefighting. These guys are trained to fight oil and gas facilities hit by enemy shelling. Imagine being a firefighter for 21 years and having to train ever since 2014 just to make sure your oil facilities. I'm sure there's Russian people like that too. But, Russia has been unable to export 40% of their oil for about 3 months now. And Ukraine does it with drones and without civilian casualties, definitely without attacking first responders. Alexander Kozin, 49 years old. These guys are all kind of my age. Been he's there in the bottom left, Alexander. And 49 years old. He was awarded the Order of Merit, third class by Zelensky himself. And he had repeatedly participated in the response to previous attacks. Yuri Mishenko, 49 years old. He's a pump operator. So he was trying to turn off pumps to get the fire under control. He's in the middle there. And Mikhailo Dub, 47 years old, shift engineer. So not just 3 first responders, but 2 guys working in the oil industry. Russia wants to be able to say, we're just doing what they're doing to us. They're not. Because there's no comparison. All these people, that I've showed you over the previous weeks. There's too many to count. That was a human safari. Yeah, those are guys. Anyway, so many. So many. But let's talk a little bit about the May 9th celebrations around the world. I didn't think I was going to have to do this, but right here in Dallas, I've been working with and making friends with the Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce and the Ukrainian Cultural Club, introduced to me by intrepid reporter Sorina Zabriskie, who I hope to have on the show again at some point when she has a chance and she's not gallivanting around Europe. Right now, there is an evacuation from a town in the Kherson Oblast. I really need to research and cover that story, but there's an evacuation plan because, like Bucha, there are people being massacred there. It's caught on the east side of the Dnipro or on the east side of Russian lines. And meanwhile, in America and across Europe, in different European cities, you have these little groups. And what I'm showing you is a Russian May 9th celebration of the end of World War II, which you will notice there's some American flags in there, but the flags are not just Russian, they're Soviet. And I don't know if the Americans participating, I mean, I'm sure there's World War II veterans and looks like people with stories. Here's the problem with this. The narrative is that the Soviet Union was strong and America was always brothers and we were never enemies. Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union were never friends. And you'll see down here eventually the narrative is not truth, but it's Putin's narrative. Putin is revered by these folks. And it's like dealing with MAGA. It's like going to, I don't know, CPAP and which is political. I don't know if MAGA holds events that they say are quote unquote not political. Turning Point USA was recently turned away from a college campus, voted for the college campus to turn them away, and they had to hold it they had to hold their event in a different place. But there's a big similarity between these folks and MAGA. And channel I recommend everyone follow is Jake Bro. He shows some of the parades in Russia and around the small towns in Russia, and how all the soldiers in those parades are disabled now in wheelchairs, missing limbs because of Putin's war. And this lady is tries to assure people this isn't political. And my Ukrainian friends, one of them was so mad about this. They said, "Hey, can you call ICE on this?" And imagine Ukrainians in Dallas have been very wary of ICE. But the unfairness of it that they must feel threatened by ICE, and that knowing that even if there were a bunch of Americans that wanted to call ICE on a Soviet celebration, you would not get the same reaction out of ICE for that right now as you would people who decided to start calling ICE on Ukrainians. ICE in itself is not about Ukraine right now, or Russia, or any white people for that matter, but it very much will be. And she knew this was just a person venting, guys. I want to make that clear. Everybody knew, you can't. And we considered maybe doing a protest outside. It couldn't get organized fast enough, but some of these events did actually have Ukrainian protests across from the Russian events. And in one such case, I was looking for, it was a social media video of one such case. An altercation did happen. If anyone can find it, please let me know in the comments. But an altercation did happen where a Russian got mad at the Ukrainian protest and assaulted Ukrainians and then had to be arrested. I'll see if I can find that again And if I can, I will re-edit it into this video. This video will either come out the year of our Lord 2026, May 12th, or today, May 11th. But I want to talk about this as citizens. As you know, there was a time when this kind of event, if it was held, would have been part of the Red Scare. It would have had police watching it very closely. And you can almost be certain that some of these folks that are planted around the nation are Putin propagandists. They are here to attempt to say, no, no, we're all a peaceful people. We just want to celebrate. And even the narrative about World War II gets twisted. You'll often see, especially on online arguments, about Russia pretty much won this war against Nazi Germany single-handedly. I'm going to go back to the normal screen here. I don't think there's many Americans who buy that. But like I said, in America, these folks should have access to the truth. And sometimes having access to the truth doesn't even matter. So Russia is a long way from decultifying themselves. And ladies and gentlemen, half of our nation, a third of our nation really, has been cultified just as much as those folks. And how do we undo it? It all starts with grievance somewhere and being successfully blamed for other people for your problems. Those folks, if they're listening to Putin, all should be blaming America for their problems. So I'm reminded of the scene where General Patton didn't want to drink with the general or any other Russian son of a bitch, and then the general says he thinks Patton's a son of a bitch too, and then Patton agrees to drink. I think that's an excellent scene. If you ever watched the movie Patton, if you haven't watched it, young kids, go watch it. That's how I feel about Russians right now. Very Patton-ish. In fact, if General George S. Patton had had his way, we wouldn't be in this mess. Let's just say that. Wasn't as crazy as MacArthur. He didn't even think he needed to use nukes. He thought we ought to turn around, and then some people thought, oh, the Russians they take Patton's quote out of context. The one where he says, like, we were fighting the wrong enemy. He didn't mean we're fighting the wrong enemy in Nazi Germany. He meant that fascism in general needs to be recognized everywhere. There's a context to it. Authoritarianism, whatever you want to call it. All right, let's get to today's main topic, which is a continuation. I've done a lot to translate this, but again, this is 3 Ukrainian soldiers who, last time I didn't inform you correctly. These guys were all in the same unit. This unit right here, I got a patch to it. It's an artillery unit that fought outside of Kyiv. And really, to tell their story, there's a book about their story. And I don't know if I can link you to this book. It is in Ukrainian. It is supposed to have an English version soon. So as soon as it gets an English version, I will promote it. But it is the story of how this artillery unit helped stop the advance on Kyiv. But all 3 of these guys were also fighters with the Red Sector. Now, the Red Sector, talking to these guys, that does not mean that they were right-wing extremists. If you look up the Red Sector in Google, you'll go, oh my God, what is this? Understand that the Red Sector and a few others, just like our own right-wing militia here in the United States, they were the only organized units. They were the only organized militia ready to fight what was going on in the east with the Russians advancing and infiltrating and creating these separatist units specifically to incite a civil war. And these guys recognized it were all three of them were involved in the Euromaidan Revolution, a very important historical event that I've talked about on this channel.
Доброго дня, мене звати Олег Мочинський. Я з чарівного міста Ходорів, яке знаходиться на Львівщині. Мій бойовий шлях почався дуже схожий, до речі, як в Дениса. У 2014 році він розпочався на Майдані в складі добровольчого українського корпусу «Правий сектор», після чого ми пройшли навчання на військовому полігоні і вирушили на схід. На сході це було, ми брали участь по всій лінії фронту, як і в Донецькій області, так і в Луганській області. Пригадаю, в липні місяці був поранений Денис. Ось. В серпні місяці, це було його перше поранення, в серпні місяці, 9 серпня, отримав я поранення. Після поранення відновився і повернувся знову ж таки на фронт. І знову почали запеклі бої. Це були бої за Авдіївську промзону. Дуже важко згадувати, отак одразу говорити, тому будемо потім дискусувати вже за питаннями. Ось. Коли почався 2022 рік, брали ми активну участь у захисті Києва. Те, що сказав Денис, вибачте, пропустивши в 18-му році також мав поранення, а то я вже в 22-й заскочив. Ось, у 23-му році отримав ще одне поранення, в 25-му році був звільнений за станом здоров'я, після чого мені ампутували праву. З Миколою, як потім ми вияснили, перша зустріч наша була на Майдані, прямо на барикаді, тому що тоді так не зналися, але з 2016-го...
So these are three guys that, I don't know if they all always fought in the same area, but at least Denis for sure is a cyborg. Cyborg being, he's fought for 36 days really, they fought for 2 years for this airport in Donetsk. But he was part of 36 days of that challenge, and it's basically the Ukrainian Alamo of 2015. And a lot of those guys got taken prisoner, and some of them have never been returned. So these guys are three bonded best friends, brothers in for life, through their warrior experiences.
Після перемоги Революції Гідності був певний волонтерський час, і в кінці 16-го я також доєднався до добровольчого українського корпусу «Правий сектор». Okay, from February 2022, I'm re-enlisted in the Ukrainian Army Force, and I started like a soldier and ended my service in the position of Commander of Company Tactical Group Relay. In first I was in defending my battalion at 134th Rifles Battalion was defending in Kiev. After that in October 2022 I started my service in the 37th Brigade. And first it was 37 Assault Regiment, but after that he transformed to Brigade, and if you know, it's a brigade of, in Ukraine it called it like Brigade of Victory, Brigade of Freedom, and in time of big counter-offensive, like I said, I was a commander of company tactical group. My company first destroyed a Russian position. We first liberate 2 hectares of Ukrainian land. That's why Mr. Zelensky awards me the Order of Bogdan Khmelnytsky. But unfortunately, in the time of counterattack Russian troops, I lost my legs. but I'm still alive. After wounded, I started my serving in the volunteer squad of drone interceptors group, and night by night I protect the Kiev, and I destroy the Shaheds. Not very long, but maybe 2 or 3. І якщо будуть питання, ми задоволені відповімо в діалозі.
The key point was the unity of people, of just simple people that stood up and made this fierce opposition, because the Russians were planning that the center is free of military units, all the military units in the east, and they thought it would be easy, and they were quite shocked by what they meant in Kiev, how people stood up, and it gave time to pull in the units that were in the east.
So he gave the whole story of the Kiev battle there with the 134th is the unit. And it's important to note that he talks about when he got wounded, and still, even though he's wounded, he still works with Ukrainian drone interceptors. So one thing I should have gone back to ask him, if I ever get a chance, is what he thinks of Ukrainian drone interceptors being used in Iran. That would have been a great question. But it's sort of like I'm just now kind of figuring out a lot of what this conversation was about. But in doing so, we're learning a lot about these heroes together. So that's 5 minutes of it. We got 5 minutes left, and then we'll talk about their charity, and that will be today's show.
So I also wanted to add, since 2014 we had this anti-terrorist operation, and later it became unified operation, and it was a good training for the full-scale war, because we were prepared for a bigger battle.
Це була чудова можливість зрозуміти, що нам потрібно готуватися, тому що нас чекає велика битва.
Questions. How is it that we are so blessed that you can come here?
То перше питання, в мене ще є інше питання. Як в нас таке благословіння, така милість, що ви приїхали до нас? Як нам так повезло?
Вам повезло з Тамарою.
Тамара Рефіла.
Ми познайомились на адвокаційних заходах в Вашингтоні, намагалися викупувати інтереси України.
We met at the advocacy discussion in Washington. We were trying to engage interest to Ukraine.
And after wounded, we with my comrades created the charity foundation for children of Ukraine in Virginia. It's a non-profit organization who support Ukrainian orphans. And Tamara said, okay, come to us and tell about it. Tell about the war, tell about it, and let's try it. And we come.
То це для нас велика пошана.
My second question, this is for each one of you. Considering the next generation rising up in Ukraine and those in families abroad, what could be your best advice to the youth, the Ukrainian youth rising up in this generation?
То моє питання до
Ви знаєте, порада буде лише одна, і її нам давали наші батьки. Будьте кращі, ніж ми.
So the only advice I can give is what our parents gave us as an advice: be better than us.
Особисто наша задача допомогти дітям тих, чиї батьки загинули на війні, тому що, на превеликий жаль, держава їм не завжди зможе допомогти. І наша задача виховати з цих людей громадян, які будуть в усьому краще, ніж ми.
Надіємося, що діти вони побачать те, що відбувається зараз, так, і ті, хто захочуть йти в політику, будуть розуміти ціну цієї свободи.
And we hope that the see what's going on right now, and if they want to come to politics, they'll understand the price that was paid for this freedom.
Маючи трьох чудових дітей, я думаю, я знаю, що їхня одна думка, щоб ніколи більше такого не повторилося, щоб батьки інших дітей були вдома, радувалися, як вони ростуть, як вони вчаться, їхнім хобі, а не вони бачили тата по телефону раз на місяць і то десь там кілька хвилин.
That is just before my question, which I'm going to go ahead and say, I said this last week. It was about identifying who was separatist and who was Russian in the Eastern Front, because I'd always thought, kind of the theme today that even Ukrainians could be fooled into believing conspiracy theories, believing that the Euromaidan wasn't legitimate, and maybe a lot of civilians were, but they certainly weren't ready to fight a revolution over it. So in order to spark a revolution, all of the separatist units were formulated by Russians. That is something that can be verified and something that I didn't realize. Like, they did not, one way or another, these soldiers, even the most, being fought by militia members and other civilians, they were under no illusions. From their perspective, there were no Ukrainians that would really take up arms against them without direct Russian leadership influence. And there were entire units of Chechens and things of that nature. And so that answered my question. And then after that, it was, more about their charity, which we will talk about now. And I just want to recognize these three heroes again, all of them continuing to fight in the best way they know how. So let's share this screen. I shared this last episode, but here we are again. Brave Children, Ukraine. I'm also going to add a banner so you can see how to get to the website. Hopefully that will. All right, there we go. So there's a banner. BraveChildren.org will bring you to this website, and they are very valid. Rarely have I been able to talk, with such obviously, I have made mistakes before in promoting charities that at least one time that, I'm not sure was on the up and up, but this one is for war orphans. I mean, come on. There are, theme of my writing is how heroic these children are, but this war doesn't choose male and female. It's not people just losing their dads. They're losing parents, brothers, sisters. Every day, there's no safe place in Ukraine. Look at all these heroes going through. They know what they're going through. They know why they're going through it. And they know who's responsible. And we all need to get out there and let the world know who is responsible. So be sure to visit that website. You're giving for a great cause, helping Ukraine's future survive. And in doing so, you're helping the front line of the Western world, of your own liberal democracy, continue. We cannot think of being oceans apart as such a great limitation anymore. If one little piece of the ocean can be closed and cause you to have to pay 3 times as much for gas, imagine what happens if European nations, a breadbasket of the world, goes under autocrat control. And with that, I will leave you with just that thought. Please do help Brave Children of Ukraine. Glory to those who support and defend the Constitution of the United States, including a great deal of Republicans of the past who have currently no political power. And glory to Ukraine, Slava Heroyam, and Slava Ukraini, and Heroyam Slava.